Welcome to Fear Brew, and I know things are a bit different this time around, but these stories are just something I've always wanted to try out since I started YouTube because these were the type of videos I would watch when I was a little bit younger. Don't worry about the massive creepypasta iceberg either. The script for the next part is almost done, and I wouldn't start that just to leave you guys hanging after getting more than halfway through that behemoth. With that said, in this video I'll cover a group of what I believe to be the scariest true Reddit stories, and as I value both the time of you and I, without further ado, let's get into it. We'll start with this story from Party Concrete 621. This story kind of creeps me out even to this day, but I have a pretty good one. I lived in Mesa, Arizona when I was 10 years old. We lived in a rough area, but I was just a kid completely ignorant to the dangers of the world. I was walking back home from my friend's house. My mother wanted me home by 9, and I'd always start walking back at around 8:40 p.m. to make sure I wasn't late. And it's only like a couple of blocks from my house, so it wasn't a super long distance. It was around the time of the year when the sun was set at 5:30 and be dark well before 7 p.m., so it was very much nighttime. As I'm walking, I hear a woman calling my name. I turned to look and see it was one of my mom's friends, but didn't know her too well. However, I just saw that she was familiar and won't say a name, but I turned around and said hello and smiled. She walked up to me and told me my mom had called her and asked her to come get me and ride me back because something had happened at my house. She said it was an emergency and that I needed to go with her and her husband, whom my family was also familiar with. I was only about 5 minutes from my house, but I was told it was an emergency and I agreed to go with her. As I'm walking, I get this weird feeling in my gut and this shaking in my legs that I now realize was my instincts being on high alert. I stopped for a minute and asked if we could call my mom, and she said my mother was in the hospital right now and that I need to hurry. Right as we were opening the door to the car, I hear my mother shout my name as loud as she can, and I turned on a dime and quickly walked towards my mom. My mom asked what was going on, and the woman replies that she was just giving me a ride home because she saw me. That was not the story she gave me, so I told my mother what she told me and asked what was going on. My mother just looked at me, and she could always tell when I'm lying and when I'm telling the truth. The woman then goes to interrupt me to likely lie, and my mom just cuts her off and stares back at her with the most shocked look ever, and these words still send shivers down my spine. She says in the most shocked voice ever, "You were trying to take my son." And the husband looks out the window, hurrying his wife in the car, and as I look back towards him, I can see a syringe on the dashboard leaning against the windshield that he grabs right as I see it. She gets in the car because at that point, my mom was ready to kill her and reached into her purse because she always keeps a pocket knife. But they drove away, and right after they did, my mom looked at me and just burst into tears saying, "I almost lost you." My mom knew full well what was happening, and I was still too shaken to even say anything and just hugged her back and we went home. I was still in denial, and to cope, I would convince myself that maybe I wasn't in any danger. My family, of course, never kept in contact with any of them, but my stepdad at the time submitted a tip to the police of the incident. When they caught up with him about 3 months later, we had found out that he was arrested for having on his computer and found restraints in his closet as well as some containers of propofol. They found pictures of me from my mom's Facebook downloaded on his computer as well, leading them to believe that I was actually being watched for a good bit. I never liked talking about it because to this day, if I hadn't stopped for those 10 seconds to ask the woman to call my mom, I don't know where I'd be or if I'd even be alive right now making this comment. And while it may seem like something that would have been easily forgotten, it was never the case for me. I have even told my closest friends this story, but I might sometime soon. I asked my mom what happened that night, why she came looking for me. She described the same feeling I remembered moments before I was almost abducted, just a lot sooner than I did, and just had the instinct that I was in danger. I'm not usually a lucky person. It seems as if the odds are always against me, but I always remember how lucky I was that night, that my mom decided to listen to her instincts when I didn't. I've never ignored my instincts since, and every night after that, when I finally did decide to leave my house, my mom would walk with me all the way up until I turned 13 to come back to live with my dad. And that to date is the scariest thing I've ever experienced. It's some shit you only hear of on the news, and nobody ever assumed it will happen to them. But my life was a mere 20 seconds from being completely different. Although this story didn't have much going on in it, stories like this tend to stick with me because, again, I've kind of been in a situation or a couple that a split second or a couple of seconds or whatever kind of decided the trajectory of my life or the decision, I guess, best way to put it. When I look back and think about things like this, it's just always a strange feeling, always weird, I guess even traumatizing to think that just I could have been 2 steps closer and died or something like that. I have had moments like this in It's just scary to think about how close we always are to making one of the worst decisions of our lives. With that said, let's move on to the next story. The Legend of the Bear Man by Fluffy Sky 2435. The Legend of Bear Man. So, people think of that one South Park episode with the Bear Man pig. No, it's not even close to that. There's this camp I used to go to during the summer. There's probably around 500 kids there for a week straight. Everyone had cabins they would stay in assigned by gender and age, and had an older person be in charge of one cabin. The older person was around 17 to 18, watching 13 to 16-year-olds in the cabins. And then the staff were actual adults who had their own cabins, but they would be on night shift duties to walk around and make sure everyone was staying in their cabins. So now you kind of get the setting, and now let's get into the legend. As it goes, in the woods and when all the kids were in the cabins and the lights were out, a bear would come out from the deep woods and wander into the campgrounds. The bear would then stand on its back legs and walk as if it was a human. Then it would choose to go in a cabin, and if you're unlucky, it would go by your bed and watch you sleep. If you made any move, it would grab you and take you into the woods to never be seen again. Hearing that scared the crap out of 14-year-old me. It was something the older girl told all of us. A bunch of the other girls were like, it's so he stay quiet and sleep, but other kids from the cabin heard of it too. I never stopped thinking about it, and I would always try to stay as still as possible when I slept. Flash forward a few years later, I ran into one of the staff that used to work at the camp, and I told him about how scared I was about Bear Man, but it was a good trick to use to get kids to stay quiet. Well, it turns out, it's actually based off a true story. I guess back in the 80s, a man dressed in a bear costume, which was some sort of mascot for the camp at the time, would take girls out of their cabins. So, as you can imagine to my horror, I was completely bewildered that Bear Man actually existed at some point in time. Our third story for this video will be a response written by the user Ratfer, and it begins with, I have twice in my life encountered something that I cannot identify, that has been identified to me as a Wendigo. I was out backcountry camping, not terribly far out, but far enough off the beaten track that I know there were no people within 5 kilometers. For the record, no drugs or alcohol, not overly tired, and if I had only been once in my life, I would write it off as a dream or a misremembered memory. Got a little thirsty late at night, cleared out my water bottle, figured I would walk down to the river nearby to fill my water bottle so the chlorine tablets could do their job overnight and I would have water in the morning. Maybe a 5-minute hike from my camp. There, by the water, lit only by the moon, is an animal. My flashlight is pointed at my feet so I don't trip. It's got 4 legs and appears dark and black. I'm going through the list in my head. Too thin for a black bear. Can't think of anything else that'd be that dark. And then it stood up. I can only describe it as a muscular coyote. With no fur, black skin, long arms, and judging by the trees it was standing near, about 7 feet tall. It looked at me, I looked at it. That was not a coyote. It was not a bear. I don't know what that was, but I sure as hell wasn't gonna find out in the middle of the night. I kept facing it, backed away slowly until I was out of the line of sight, and got back to my camp, packed up my shit, and left. Some years later, and about 1,000 kilometers away, I had a second encounter. Late at night, I'm walking down a dirt service road near a farm. Head pops out of the wheat and looks at me. I recognize that shape. It wasn't looking at me. I shouted, hey, don't mind me, I'm just going that way. It looked at me, the head disappeared into the wheat, and I noped the fuck out of there. I don't know what I saw. It doesn't match anything I've ever seen. I've since had the chance to speak to some people about it. Answer I get is a wolf or a coyote with mange. No way. Ears were wrong, and those arms were too long, aside from the way it stood. I don't claim it was supernatural or some undiscovered cryptid, but I don't go walking into the moonlight in the back country of the Rockies anymore. When asked if it was a bear without fur, Ratford would respond saying, the ears were long and came to a point, and the arms were long enough to be near its knees. Bears also have this kind of fat bottom, but this thing had a more uniform thickness. He would get a couple more responses saying that it's a bear with mange, but if what he says about its description is true, then I'm unsure myself. Next story by Old Improvement 3351. My girl and I were flying into her hometown after being out pursuing around the country for Thanksgiving. It was a few days earlier than scheduled, so we didn't tell any of her family or mine who also flew in, because we had been spending Thanksgiving together for the last few years. We honestly didn't utter a word. This was back in 1992, so there were no cell phones and no tracking abilities or any of that nonsense. Anyway, we got into town late at night, 11 p.m., 12 a.m. We had decided that we were going to stay in a hotel since the plan was to surprise the family and while showing up on their doorstep late at night would have certainly surprised them. That wasn't really the kind we were going for. We get into our room. It's got a kitchenette, a couch, a TV, king bed. It all around probably one of the nicer places we've stayed in. I pass out immediately. She takes a shower. For what she's told me, she lays in bed, unable to sleep until about 2 a.m. For context, we were in an extended stay hotel with a door that led right out to the parking lot. There was a sliding glass door to the left of the bed. Straight ahead was the couch, the door, a desk, and a smaller window. Blinds were shut on the sliding glass door, but on the smaller window, I guess they were open a crack, but when she realized she was so tired, she didn't care all that much. Our room was completely dark, so it wasn't really like anybody could see in any way kind of mentality. As she turns over to go to sleep at 2 a.m., through the slightly open blinds at the smaller window, she sees a flash, like a camera flash, but because the parking lot is 50 steps away, she just simply assumes that it's a street light and doesn't think anything of it and falls asleep. 5 a.m. rolls around and I'm woken up to loud knocking on the sliding glass door. She wakes up only a few seconds after I do and is just as confused and disoriented as I am. Continuous, persistent knocking. I had half a mind to just assume that it was some drunkard, it was the holidays after all, who had come back from a night out and made the wrong turn somewhere while trying to get back to his room, but was sure he was where he was supposed to be. Knocking stops briefly, then starts on the front door. I want to further emphasize how this knocking was. Not quite like a police knock, but someone was sure that they wanted into this room and wasn't going to stop until they got in. I go over to the door to look through the peephole, and I don't see anybody. The knocking starts again on the sliding glass door. If it was someone trying to wake up whoever they were with because they got locked out of their room, wouldn't they be announcing themselves? Wouldn't they be calling out the name of the person that they were trying to so desperately wake up? Like I said, the knock wasn't quite police-like, so I know that it wasn't them. They would have made sure everyone knew they were there had it been. I go back to the sliding glass door and just stand there. The knocking persists. Once it stops, I peel the curtain back just enough so I can see out the window. I'm pretty blind without contacts and didn't have my glasses on, so I'm practically pressing my face up to the glass, and I see nobody. The second that I shut the blinds, the knocking starts again. At this point, I'm freaked out. I was trying to keep my composure as to not make my girl unsettled, but we were both already past that point. Nobody knows that we're here. Nobody that would want to pull a prank on us. None of our family, our friends, nobody. The only person that knows we're here was the older man who checked us in. And why the hell would he care where we are? I'm borderline a little worried for our safety if whoever was out there managed to get in and had cruel intentions upon entering. I'm a small guy. I'm 5'8", 125 pounds soaking wet. I can talk a lot of crap and can throw a punch, but if somebody bigger than I really wants to kick my ass, they'll be able to do it no problem. I call up to the front desk as the knocking doesn't stop, and on the second ring, the man who checked us in answers and seems concerned as to why I'm calling at this hour. I explain the situation. The knocking is still happening as I'm on the phone, and he tells me that he's going to send a security guard over to check it out. The knocking continues on for about another minute. Not even probably 2 or 3 minutes after the knocking stops, I get a call back from the front desk who says that security didn't see anybody, didn't see any signs of anybody, but that he apologizes for whatever happened. Super comforting. Neither one of us fell back asleep until it was light out, and when we went out later in the day, there was a singular footprint leading away from the sliding glass door. Weird because we were in a nice part of town. It was a place she grew up in and therefore felt safe in, knowing the area as well as she did. That's one of the reasons why we chose to stay at this place. But it was horrible. We were both still stumped as to what the situation was. I don't know. I still get uncomfortable just thinking about it, really. Something killed the neighbor's dog. I've lived on my property here for about 30 years. I bought the block with my husband and we started off in a caravan and soon built around it to create my little house. We tried to make a family, but that didn't seem to be on the cards for us. 20 years ago, my husband passed from mowing the lawn, dropped dead of a heart attack. Since then, it's just been me, my 2 dogs, my cat, my frog, the cockatoo, the wild kookaburras, the Maggies, the rooster, the big python in the shed, my old boy horse that I got when my husband was still around, still kicking he is, and the swan I rescued as the wee ugly duckling. Mother was eaten by foxes, she was. Now, it was summer back in who knows when, let's say mid to late 2000s. There was drought, dams were near empty, and I barely had enough water to keep my roses alive. My husband planted them when we got married. Well, anyway, those people from the water services built a channel right behind my property line about 20 years back. Take the water from upstream and drain the cracks for the farmers here and then try to charge them. Good luck trying to squeeze a penny out of me. So what I do is keep the dam full. I go out in the middle of the night with my pump, leave it on for an hour or two, top up the dam, and smooth sailing for a while, and the swans are happy. I can top up my tanks with the pump straight from the dam, and that fills the ponds and waters my garden. So I was out one night, just about to put my pump in the canal when I saw something move in the water. You know it's got algae and stuff, but the water usually clears. But I'm telling you, the way that dark water swirled that night, something big was under there. So I went back to the house and got my big spotlight. I walked back up to where my pump was and shined the light up and down the canal, but I couldn't see anything except wet slide tracks going up the side of the cement bank, and the grass was moved. I think I spooked it off. Anyway, I pumped my water and got back home. The next day I had water fellas knocking at my door. Now when I saw them on my property, I was ready for a fight, so I stormed out, and to my surprise, they were asking if my dogs were okay. Mine were inside with me, and I asked them why. They told me they found a dog in the canal torn to shreds. Same neighbors got hit only a few years earlier by a pack of wild dogs run by the biggest bitch you've ever seen. You wouldn't believe the mayhem that caused the neighborhood, but that's a different story. It wasn't a pack of dogs that killed this one. I know that whatever I saw in the water was what took that dog, but I couldn't go telling them all that I could. So I kept my mouth shut and decided to pump my water during the day and hope for the best that the water guys never did their rounds when I was pumping. Haven't been caught yet. Something strange though. There was an uncomfortable feeling around the place for a month or so. It soon passed after we finally got some rain. Whatever it was, never bothered me or my animals. I think it was just thirsty like the rest of us. I just wish I had a torch on me when I first went up so I could have caught a better glance. To me, it was nothing more than a shadow in the water, so I couldn't tell you what it looked like except that it was bigger than me. Probably a good thing though. If I found another animal, I'd probably end up adopting it, and heavens know I have enough on my hands as it is. And here's our last story by Fubar Is My Life. I posted this before, but it fits here as well. I always parked in a certain spot at my last job for 12 years that I was there. It was accessible to the public as it wasn't company parking, but they wanted us to park in the back of the lot so the closer spots could be available for customers. One day, my spot's taken by a dark tinted caddy, and I'm immediately pissed because everyone knows it's mine. It's morning shift, so 4 a.m. So it can't be one of the others because I know what they drive. So newbie, or maybe another employee from another shop in the plaza. It's still there on my lunch break, and when I go home in the next day, I come in at 1 p.m. till close, around 9:30, and then also the next. Something about it really bothered me. It smelled wrong, literally. It's the South in high summer, and who knows what's baking in there. My dad was a Marine, then a police officer. He always said if you feel something is wrong, there probably is. So I dialed a non-emergency contact police number. I felt like an idiot, but every time I walked by it, it bugged me. So I was stuck waiting for over an hour before anyone shows, and honestly, if I hadn't been off the next day, I would have been like, F it. But I waited, mostly because I can be a really petty SOB, and that's my spot, damn it. The police show, all annoyed because who knows how many they can't park here calls they get. They run the license plate through, and then things go crazy. They want my info, want me to contact my manager, does his lot have cameras, have I touched the car, etc. Apparently, the car is on Amber Alert, as the last sighting of a missing person who was a minor, a 15-year-old girl. When they pop the trunk, they find her body under a blanket and the source of the smell. She had gone out with her much older, controlling, insecure boyfriend, but had decided to get out of the relationship. She only made the mistake of getting into the car with him. He drove 3 counties over after torturing her, stuffing her in there, and who knows what else, then parked and walked away, leaving her to die in the trunk. I never learned her time of death, so it haunts me sometimes thinking that she might have been saved if I had made a fuss earlier. So, yeah, listen to your gut, even if it seems petty. With that, we conclude our scary Reddit stories. Let me know if you guys want me to keep doing content such as this in between icebergs. I know that the icebergs take forever to get out. They are hour-and-a-half long videos. Takes time. So I figured I could do these in the middle of them. That said, thank you so much for watching. And of course, I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace out.